This next technique of using the wall as sort of security, as we start to examine how to bear weight as well as get used to being upside down, I found is incredibly effective across the board, towards forearm balance, towards headstand, towards handstand. It's much harder than the actual pose. And so the strength gets developed so that when we actually make our way towards the destination posture, it's usually much easier than we thought. And I've been amazed at how effective it is. In fact, it seems like pretty much almost everybody can do it. Now I'm going to show how to use a brick for this and a chair for this, but you can also do it without those props. Okay, so the heels, I'm up against my wall, and now where my heels are where I'm going to place my brick. Now I'm measuring off, so the middle of the brick is where my heels are. Now this is not ultimately where the brick is going to end up. This is a measuring device. Then I'm going to turn around. I'm going to place my forearms so that the brick is in the middle of them. Then I'm going to slide the brick forward so it's between my fists. Now, you can work this next forearm balance preparation as well as arm strengthener. You can work it with the hitchhiker thumb, with that wrap and that softening. You can work it with the hands pressing into the brick. And then you might also decide to work it with the hands in the, more the formal forearm balance preparation. I'm going to show it with the hitchhiker thumb. So you find the hitchhiker thumb, you find that same wrap we've been finding. You soften in those levator scapula. The toes tuck under the hips lift. And you might decide at this point, this juncture, that's enough. However, if appropriate, you place one foot about where the hip is. You use that foot to lift the other foot up. Now, if you're of the bendier variety, it'll be tempting to kind of arch into the back. And so your job is to draw that navel back into the spine, let that tailbone extend, getting that sense of that wrap, and then just relaxing. Just a few breaths. And then let yourself come back down and take a break. Find either a child's pose, forehead towards the earth, lengthening. So that's one way. Now I've been using the same method to practice towards headstand. So in this method, you do not need the brick. Where my heels are now are where my fists are going to go. Okay, so you might use the brick to kind of be like, measure off if you don't have such a good short-term memory. That's where my hands are going to go. Now, this measurement, this palms to the elbows, this is one of those, it just doesn't always work. But it's about where we want to be. Now, we've already done this standing, interlacing the fingers, tuck the little pinky finger in, rooting down through the wrists, wrapping my shoulders back and away. And oftentimes when I'm working with a class setting, I'll have everybody kind of dunk down into their shoulders first so we're all on the same page of pressing, rooting, rolling, and wrapping. This stays soft, toes tuck under, and for some peeps it might be more effective to simply stay here. But if it's appropriate, same idea, foot comes up in line with the hip. You let your feet find the wall. This bendy thing is temptation. If that's the case, you work the tailbone. Now, my son, depending on how you're put together, your head might start to dust the floor. But the play is keeping that wrap and rooting. We're strengthening here. We're not really balancing. Okay, when you've cooked that in, you let it rest. You come back down, you take a break. Tune into the chest, you roll back. Nice. Now, I find that most people can pull that off, but with some of my stiffies, sometimes it's the hamstrings that are getting in the way, okay? And there's a common complaint is the wall is slippery. So a chair, and I have to thank Doug Keller for this suggestion from his article on the shoulders, a chair is incredibly effective for starting to get a lift. So just, just so you know, just in case it's for you or for some of the peeps you work with, you set up the exact same way or in the forearm balance, okay? Rooting, rolling, softening. Okay, you lift up through the hips. Now I'm a little far. I want to be a little closer. You lift up through the hips, and then you can bring your feet up on the chair. And then with your feet up on the chair, you can get a sense of that. You can start to get a sense of that without having to have such flexible hamstrings. You can even bend the knees a little bit. Okay. In fact, admittedly, as I'm sitting here doing this, I'm like, oh, this is so much nicer. Okay. Let that come on back down. Is that making sense? Okay, and just for the last one, just to show, since I mentioned it at the beginning of the clip. Now, for that, obviously, you don't need a fancy chair with the back cut out. Any old chair will do, but having a chair with the back cut out is incredibly useful for other things. One more, just so we make sure that we're giving credence. Handstand, half handstand preparation. Where my heels are, where my hands are going to go, because that's about my leg length distance. Knowing that this is a lot harder than actual handstand. I'm going to bring my palms. I'm going to set up just like we did for the plank and the down dog. Rooting, wrapping, softening. Okay, and a la Shipman style, like get a sense of that heavy-handedness. Like get a sense of trusting. Okay, and when you have a feeling of that trust, then you lift. And then it's the same. Foot in line with the hip. Foot in line with the hip. I'm rooting, I'm wrapping, and I'm practicing softening. Now my back's temptation is to do this, so I have to work a little bit on this. Nice. Breathe. And then when you've given that enough time, let yourself lower down. Stretch your wrists out. Maybe, this is my favorite, this is the Molly Shannon Superstar. Squeeze. And then really in honor of Molly Shannon, Superstar. So give that a try. See how that works for you. Let us know. Love.